SABC will be launching an educational channel to help support learners to study remotely. The channel's robust PBA schedule ranges from formal, informal to interactive learning. The SABC Education channel will be digitally streamed via the following platforms: SABC Education Portal, SABC Education Virtual Academy, SABC 1, 2 and 3's websites, and social media platforms. Check the SABC Education website for more information. SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
Dumelang ra amagela mo go Daily Thetha on SABC 1. Nakalibiso ke na Nicolette wa Gamashile ngwana wa kwa Bushbuckridge Mapulaneng ena re tshweleng lona lemela matsogo ke se rona Andisa wa Gakebashe. As you saw again, we're mentioning it again, we have an SABC Education channel, so please do make sure that you are watching, especially for bana ba duleng right now who might feel like they are missing some sort of education because schools are definitely closed during this lockdown. Today we're looking at the scourge of corruption and looting in South Africa, and really looking at how it has deprived many South Africans of some of their basic rights: right to health, right to education, right to food, right to access of anything in this country that does come from the government. And the reality is that a lot of people, yes, we might say they are making and building their wealth from this looting and corruption, but ultimately, is this the type of South Africa that we are building? And currently with COVID-19, we've also seen some of that happening right here in South Africa.
Ngithi kubingelele komncane nakumdala ngithi ayisawubona umelodi wakamiyela ucwanini usibe uzizi sithi sigene endabeni namhlanje asibuki kuphela ukuthi just the corruption ukuthi abantu batshontshe imali and the financial element of it, but we look at the lives that then of now being able to go through the pain, the lives that are also going through a lot of challenges empilweni. Umuntu lona bekumele ukuthi enze umsebenzi athole imali ukuthi asize umndeni wakhe today is now suffering because of someone who had a greedy plan ukuthi athathe imali afake ephaketheni lakhe kuyena kuphela. And we look at the culture of that affects us as umphakathi. I mean, you look at the health sector that is affected by corruption, leading to people dying. Life is Dimeni as an example, as we've seen over the years of life in South Africa. But also, we want to find out from you as umuntu ohlelekayo ukuthi ngempela corruption uyayazi, do you understand it? Do you see it? And so themba kanjani, of course, the government yet when it comes to handling our money.
A coalition of 12 civil society organizations came together to sit with Business South Africa. What was the cost of state capture? Let's see how much it has costed us as South African taxpayers.
Gathered to count the cost are civil society bodies, Open Secrets, Outer, Corruption Watch, among others. They say ordinary citizens have paid a high price. Not only have citizens paid through taxes, they have paid through undelivered health services, education, textbooks, and poor public transport and policing. They say corruption and state capture are not victimless crimes.
The tribunal today, I think, is an important step in understanding how the corruption has affected the political economy of our country. You know, we've always been told by the former president that corruption is victimless. Now we understand, I think, from what is emerging from these hearings today, that corruption has a face, and it has a dreadful, devastating impact on the human beings in our country. And it speaks to not only the looting and misappropriation of money, but it speaks to the economic choices that have been made by our political leaders. It speaks to the economic decisions that get made, which affect whether or not you have an ambulance to convey somebody who's near death's bed to receive the right emergency services. It speaks about the loss of a generation in terms of access to education. And it also speaks about economic choices we made when we bought trains that don't even fit onto the railings, and how that affects those who are the most marginalized and vulnerable in our community.
We feel that it is our duty to provide this platform as civil society organizations to give the mouthpiece to the people that we represent. And that is why we have done this today. And we hope that in people coming here today and us hosting this and really seeing that people have to wake up at 4 a.m. to get to work that's 20 minutes away and they only get there at 8. These are the stories that we saw today. Textbooks not being delivered, people going to clinics not getting healthcare, people having to nurse each other at hospitals where there should be professionals there to do that job. These are the stories that have come out today.
And I think, Melody, for me, it's quite interesting when we're looking at, what conversations were happening between these 12 coalition organizations. Because in Puesa, back to the conversation we once had in our episodes about the commissions. Because state capture is one of the biggest lootings of our money in South Africa. Mara arikli saying fast. Arate government riveka motoko. Ritibelele rune as South Africans. Do we as South Africans also have a culture of being complacent when we are faced with corruption, but also actively participating
in corruption? It's simple. Sometimes we teach our children at home to turn a blind eye, and when they need to really call out a problem in society, because sebefunde ekhaya. Asithi sithatha ama voice note when we asked you ukuthi ngempela siyathemba ukuthi government iyakwazi ukuthi size when it comes to corruption and handling our money.
To be honest, I don't trust our leaders because they use times as this to steal from poor people. We will never beat the culture of looting with this high rate of unemployment in our country. And our leaders make things worse by stealing things that belongs to those who have nothing. And do I really think that corruption will ever end in South Africa? Never. Because those who do corruption never get arrested simply because they have money and power.
Hello, Daily Thetha. It's Alfred Nongauza from Mthatha. I don't think our government will ever stop looting from the poor and taking the food from the mouth of the poor. Because every time they are supposed to be planning, they don't plan, they just looking for the opportunity to loot. It's just to remove our ANC government. That's all I want South Africa to do.
Ebuhlungu kakhulu ngemizwe limlayezo sizwayo is because you think about the fact that abantu abalimala kakhulu abantu abahluphekile emakhaya, it is the people that are really struggling, but even more so the rich are stealing from the poor and making them even more poor.
And let's just be honest, we are stunting South Africa's growth. But let's go to a social media that's coming in. I don't trust our government leaders anymore. Looting starts from the top leaders of government, so that there's nothing we can do to stop them. Corruption will never end in South Africa if our society still treats people according to their economic and social status. And I think that's also, it's an important factor, but we also mustn't forget, government
yeah. And investment is on Genaguppi. Even more so, after the ad break, about how deep the culture of looting is in Mzansi Africa. After the ad break, good Daily Thetha.
Welcome back to Daily Thetha. And just before we took an ad break, Melody Uriputi said question important. How do we have a culture from the poor in this country? Is it that deeply entrenched in South African culture that looting and corruption are the norm of the day? Now, to have this conversation, we are joined by Dr. Mcebisi, who's an associate professor at the Department of Politics and International Relations at the University of Johannesburg. And he's also an author. But before we get to him, I want us to talk a little bit about the 296 billion that has been wasted by South African government. It's a wasteful expenditure. The Auditor General every year wasteful expenditure in South Africa. And for some of us, we don't really look at the impact, Melody, that actually has on the progress of South Africa. But before we get to all that conversation, SANCO, the South African National Civic Organization, the case against some very up-top officials about the distribution of food parcels and the looting there. Let's go and see what happened there.
This family depends on social grants and their recycling business. The lockdown has halted their business. They were pinning their hopes on food parcels. Community leaders confirmed that they had been identified as beneficiaries.
We are not getting anything, not even food. With our business, we knew that if we sold these recycled materials, then at least we get some money for food.
It is communities such as these that are hardest hit by the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And now, with the COVID-19 pandemic upon the rest of the globe, they too are not spared. They want to know what criteria was used for the people who did qualify for food parcels. Community leaders also say only 12 food parcels had been delivered here. Sanko has since opened a corruption case at the Silverton police station against officials they suspect of distributing food parcels on personal preferences.
But we know the suspect. One of the suspects is one of our members. The other one is a government official that is working within the Department of Social Development. It's part of corruption. And we cannot allow that corruption to happen at the expense of the poor.
Joby Bonela again, it leaves us at home worried. We're left worried and questioning, and can we trust our leaders? Says Bonela, over the years, various politicians in high levels, leaders, officials who've been caught with the hand in what we call the cookie jar. And at this time, we're supposed to also trust them. In this time of COVID-19, we look at the resources that are being distributed and we worry, what do we do? But of course, we have this conversation not with ourselves, but also we're joined by Dr. SABC, who joins us in conversation. Doctor, welcome to Daily Thetha.
Hi, thank you.
Doctor, I would like to just jump into the core of this conversation. We look at the core of corruption. In your opinion, in your studies over the years, where do you think this really comes from?
Well, corruption is simply, an activity that people get into for a number of reasons. People could be struggling. You might not have food, you might not have money, and you're in a desperate situation. And if you think you can get away with stealing something, getting something inappropriately, you will do that. Corrupt people are not necessarily evil. They are driven into those circumstances by desperation. So the important thing about any society is are rules and institutions. I think humanity has long discovered by now that human beings are selfish by nature. And because you want to preserve your being, you can always justify why you are stealing. And, who wants to die, right? So, but your thieving causes harm to others. And so you are not supposed to survive at the expense of others. So that is why then society has rules. And because we are all part of society, we have what is called social contract. There are certain rules that we agree to abide by. Thou shalt not steal, A, B, C, and D. And the state will then enforce those rules. So the key to preventing prevalence of corruption is to have rules and enforce those rules strictly. And by the way, corruption does have victims. It does have casualties. The money that you steal would have gone elsewhere. The food parcels that are being stolen, right, might just lead to starvation of other people.
Dr. As it touches a point in my heart to ask Uguti, the poor are the one that they're stealing from. And abantu abatshontshayo from abantu abahluphekile, at what point do they understand how much they are affecting the people on the ground?
Well, you need to retaliate. These are politicians. It therefore means that with next elections, for instance, you shouldn't vote for them. You must tell them that, they are thieves, ngamasela, and they are unworthy of public office. Or the other way of registering the inappropriateness of their actions is to arrest them. So that's, that's the most basic thing. The stealing is a violation of the law. So once you violate the law, then you must go to prison. But the many instances where people get away with thievery creates a sense that you can get away with it. So you have a lot of chance takers. So, the number of thieves multiplies. Whereas if you enforce the law from the very beginning, you arrest people, that is a deterrent. Nomunye okubhekile will see ukuthi yeah, if I do this, I'll be arrested. And the continuation and the severity of stealing leads to even other crimes.
Dr.
For instance, people who are accused, yes.
Dr. Mnebisi, apologies, and I think you just touched on something very important. It looks as if the South African citizenry has lost faith in fighting corruption and looting. Day in, day out, shelter state funerals, shelter 2010, shelter as a South African that I'm sitting and I'm watching this news, what do I do? What can I do?
Well, you have to act yourself. Now to something complain, because the reality of life you know by now is that Mashudu Ateng, people who live on thievery, right? And that has exacerbated because of lack of enforcement of the law.
Yes.
So that lack of enforcement then creates a sense of impunity, that if I steal, I will not be arrested. But people are becoming even more daring.
Why is there a lack of enforcement? Perhaps a reverse so, because the people, the institutions, the Chapter 9 institutions that are supposed to be enforcing the laws, why is there seemingly an unwillingness to do that?
It also shows you the prevalence of corruption in our institutions.
Yes.
Because, for instance, if monies get stolen from the municipality,
yeah,
and councillors suspect monies have disappeared, so we need to investigate. Councillors, the law says that councillors should vote amongst themselves whether or not they should have an investigation.
Yes.
So remember, some of them might be implicated. So they might as well decide. So they might as well decide. If we decide to investigate, obviously, so they might decide not to. But if they do decide, right, you will have an investigation by the Auditor General, an independent investigation. So when gets the report, yes.
Because I quickly would love to take an ad break and Bespuya to also dig deeper into that thought, but also to look at the people that are directly affected, from clinics to people that are sitting with the education system not working for them. Let's take an ad break. Bespuya skwazi ukuthi sixoxe kabanzi ngale ndaba. Welcome back to Daily Thetha SABC 1 Sachabulutu Sahleli Nati. And of course, as we sit with such an important conversation, sikhuluma corruption, sikhuluma ukuthi umuntu ohlele ekhaya imlimaza kanjani. And of course, you look at things like from the transport system, sibuke ukuthi kwezemfundo ukuthi thina silimala kangakanani, but also we look at how the conversation expands to the future, which ingane zethu that will get to experience due to people taking money for their own. We're still sitting with, of course, uDokotela uMcebisi Thetha, who is still educating us when it comes to this rooting of corruption. Dokotela, thank you so much for staying with us.
Yes.
Dokotela, looking at the point of connecting the corruption to the person on the ground. We've seen different cases that have been televised nationally, but we've seen little cases that have shown abantu beboshwa for the crimes they've committed. I mean, we saw the different inquiries that have sat. We've seen proof of people being said to be ukangile, kodwa naba basahamba freely.
Well, it's because of collusion between politicians and law enforcement agencies. That is why today you have the term called state capture. That most of those people who are appointed into positions in these law enforcement agencies were people that were trusted and were appointed for the sole purpose of protecting others. So utenga abantu, you know, you appoint your own bras, uyabatenga 40, and that itself is protection. So that is why we then, when we talk about reforming our institutions and cleaning up, is to make sure that we have competent people. Abanye nje abawazi umsebenzi wabo. And that's the reason why they were employed. It's because they're idiots or not qualified. So Muntu is grateful of being a DG or commissioner or whatever. All that they're excited about is the salary and the car and all sorts of attention that they get from other people.
It makes me want to follow up, Thetha, looking at the fact that, 3.6 million people in a report that was released, of course, by the anti-poverty organizations, one, which says that, the 3.6 million people that have died due to corruption has truly not triggered the responsibility of government to be aware of how far corruption can go.
Government is aware of how far corruption can go. But those in government, some of them are responsible for the corruption. So obviously they won't act against themselves. People steal, they steal, and when you steal, the intention is not to go to prison, is to live comfortably, you know, to have nice shirts and long pointed shoes, driving BMW, drinking fancy whiskey. That's the kind of nice life you have in mind when you steal. Prison doesn't come to mind.
Yeah, it does sound like a very greedy way of looking at life, Dr. Mcebisi. And perhaps maybe that is why then there's a complacency from rona batho ba South Africa because we don't have the financial muscle to take on somebody who's already a government official and, as you rightfully say, can buy law enforcers.
Well, I think society is beginning to react to this, even though not in a strong individual way. For instance, part of the reason why the ANC has dropped down to 54% around that recently is because of the corruption that the ANC has been guilty of.
Yes.
People have been complaining about corruption, and their level of support has been dropping over the years because of corruption. And now they're taking it seriously. I mean, now, for the very first time, the Auditor General, for instance, has a law that says that, or that empowers the AG to press charges against officials who are guilty of unauthorized expenditure.
That's fantastic.
There has been a few cases, I think in Oldson or George, in the last 2 years or so, of a city manager who's been sentenced to about 3 to 5 years for having authorized something illegally. So these things are happening slowly, but happening they are. And ordinary people like you and I are beginning to react to that. That is why the ANC government, that is why you have the commission, for instance.
Yeah.
Because they know that if they don't show they are fighting against corruption, people will turn away from them. Other parties who are the ANC corruption are benefiting with votes because, voters are looking for clean people.
And perhaps maybe it's a pity that even these commissions are costing the taxpayer in the country to be able to sit and uncover things that maybe some people should have rightfully come out and actually said. Doctor, let's maybe look at the face of corruption. It's two sides of one coin. Corruption corruption's got a face, and the face is black, and it's stealing from its own people. Can we talk a little bit about this nature of corruption? Is it because the people that will suffer are what is known as the majority, but the majority that kind of doesn't matter in the country?
Well, it affects everybody. And these victims are there. You just need to look close enough. For instance, when you look at RDP houses,
yes,
some of these houses, the builders who got the contract would have been an uncle of a councillor without any experience building large number of houses. And because that person got the deal inappropriately, he has to pay someone else, the 10% people.
Yes.
You know. So then the builder, when he gets this contract, the money has already reduced drastically.
Yes.
And he also wants to make a profit. So when he buys material, instead of buying 20 cements, for instance, he buys 7. So everything is halved. So material, is not good material. The next thing within no quality, and all sorts of things.
But doctor,
So,
although somebody in a culture in South Africa, as long as at least
Yeah.
is that also something that we should be accepting?
well, it just shows how bad things are, right? It's bad, but let it be a little bit bad, not too bad. It's an indictment of how bad things are. It's how worse we have become. So that's where we need to lift ourselves from. Have prosecutions. Because we know, for instance, in a certain municipality, so much money, so many contracts went to councillors and officials. Just last year, about R1 billion worth of contracts went to companies that are owned by officials and councillors. So, mang ufumane eng kai, right? But the law does empower municipalities to investigate, because the AG also highlights instances of fraud.
Yeah.
About more than 60%, for instance, of our municipalities do not pursue findings of fraud,
Corruption.
or suspicion.
But, Doctor,
So because it involves them as well, yes.
Yeah, my thing then becomes, political affiliation is a big part of corruption in South Africa.
Yep.
And my worry sits on the people abafaka abantu emsebenzini, give them the new skill ukuthi la sidla kanje. And the new generation, we've seen them from campus level, where we've seen them utilizing their power to hold subjective or even money to give to students unless they need favors. How do we now cut this chain in this time as we see it's growing longer and longer?
Well, you have to be intolerant of corruption. You are right, it does start at high school campus politics where money are distributed. So you stand your ground and make sure that you elect upright people. Things are so bad if you don't steal upari. That's how bad things are.
But doctor, they're not only stealing in public sector, even the private sector, we've seen quite a number of corruption coming out. So, it's been quite an interesting conversation with you. And thank you very much for contextualizing law enforcement, it needs to come in. And as you rightfully said, there is instances where law enforcement has come through. So thank you very much, Dr. Mnebisi, for being with us. He's definitely a professor too, for being with us and really contextualizing that conversation.
And we do not just see people stealing money. Just forget from in a sense. In the Northern Cape, the Hawks investigated food parcel fraud. Have a look at what happened.
The message is clear. Action will be taken against those stealing from the poor. The Provincial Department of Social Development has removed ward councillors from the food distribution chain following complaints of irregularities.
We are working closely with the Hawks in connection with the manipulation of lists and also the unfair distribution of food parcels, to the extent that Department of Social Development has taken over this entire process by itself, and we have excluded all councillors, all ward committee members. It's a DSD exclusive process, and all information received by the public will be relayed to the investigating unit for further investigations.
SASSA will now also implement a technology-based solution to roll out food assistance through vouchers and cash transfers. Kimberley residents say those who steal from the poor must be jailed.
It is very heartbreaking because, as a councillor selling foods for people who are disadvantaged, who are not working, is very unfair. So I will wish that if somebody is caught, a councillor or whoever in government entities, stealing foods from the poor people, he must be arrested and go to jail.
I feel very sad because those people are getting paid by government. There's no need for them to steal this food because they are getting a lot of money from government. If they steal from the vulnerable, how are we going to survive?
Over 20,000 food parcels have been distributed across the province during the lockdown. While many South Africans are going to bed hungry, it seems like some can't keep their hands out of the cookie jar for corrupt ends.
What is actually happening in South Africa? When we come back, we ask you, what should we be doing with anybody that is in the public sector and found actually looting, public sector, both public sector and private sector, looting from the poorest of the poor in the country? Please be with us after Papacho.
Welcome back to Daily Thetha on SABC 1. We really appreciate you to wear Nekaya, Usahleli Nathi. Wherever you are at this point, we are part of you and you are part of us. Since and just extending our thoughts and feelings about what should really happen to umuntu who is corrupt and who is corrupting La Sebenza Khona. And of course, for us, it becomes a big question. And that's why we'll be sitting with the president of Youth Economic Association, which is Uputi Africa Mkangala, who will speak to us. But before he speaks to us, let's quickly look into the day where the president, which is Unumzane Cyril Ramaphosa, announced 500 billion as the COVID-19 relief fund that will be given to South Africans. Little did we know that, of course, corruption will creep into the back of our minds. But before it did, the president himself had something to say. Have a look what he had to say.
But all that good work has been tainted by alleged corrupt councillors who stand accused of stealing food meant to offer relief to the poor. President Cyril Ramaphosa says the money set aside to stimulate the economy should not end up in corrupt hands.
So we want to stamp that out from the onset, and we actually want to take proactive and are taking proactive steps to ensure that it does not happen. I do not want to hear of a commission request after the COVID package. I don't want to hear of a COVID commission, and therefore we want to take proactive steps.
And to have this conversation, we're joined by Africa Mkangala, who's the president of the Youth Economic Association. Let's welcome him into Studio Africa. Welcome to Daily Thetha, Papa.
Good morning, good morning. Oh, sorry, it's afternoon already.
It's certainly good morning. And maybe perhaps Africa, maybe President Aruna, there will be no commission of inquiry in dealing with anybody that tries to loot the stimulus package that is currently being rolled out in South Africa. But my question is, what would have changed?
It's a difficult, because he doesn't give an alternative. So obviously the commission of inquiry, big fiasco that we've been having for a year and a half that has cost us a couple of 100 million, has not yielded any results whatsoever. But even as he says that he doesn't offer an alternative. So it's almost as if, okay, if it happens, it happens. It's almost like a teacher reprimanding naughty kids that he or she knows are naughty, but then says there's no punishment.
Yeah.
So it's a bit disappointing. But I think also one of the biggest problems that we do have with corruption is that we've made it a Hollywood blockbuster, a type of storyline. We're chasing. And I think Gimzwilu Baba, who was speaking previously, and I mostly disagreed, mostly agreed, but then the part where he laid the blame solely on politicians is where I would really disagree, because if you look at it, the people that do the sign off are the administrators. They do work sometimes with the politicians, they do work sometimes on their own. And then they also work with people in private business. It's almost as if private business has been removed from it, as if come to us and they say here. You know, they come to us and they say here, I will give you this, but it's most of the time it's a symbiotic relationship. So it's a problem that exists in society. It's a problem where corruption in any way and form, from the people who are still selling cigarettes, who are still selling alcohol through the back door, the people who are sneaking out when they shouldn't be sneaking out, that is in one way a form of corruption or corrupt activity.
Africa, sorry, Papa. Grata what you've just said now about the fact that we mustn't give an angelic halo to the private sector. Because often what you see is that when the private sector steps in, they somehow do their looting and corruption in a very systematic manner, right? And perhaps what I want to ask, does South Africa's justice system have the processes and the powers to be able to call those people into task, especially the private sector?
I don't think they really do, and I think to a certain extent they might not even have the desire to. So the political will it doesn't seem to be there. And ngikusholo lo ngoba we've defined corruption in this little corner and then purposefully not expanded it so that abanye it doesn't reach them. And therefore always allow certain activities from certain people that go against the whole ethos of why we even exist as a country, whilst allowing others. But the first problem is that who collects evidence, who does the investigations, and that is a policing function. They then build a case, and if that case is weak, when it comes to the court of law and the case is weak, there's absolutely nothing the court can do.
But Africa,
even if the judge,
because I mean, where you're going is again, I guess, alluding to how the responsibility of government needs to be played. But my fight is endlini endlini where corruption is started and practiced day to day, with the mother or the father having that fails and filters into mkakweni. Who then brings them to book?
In this case, it should be your own conscience. It should be your own conscience, because it starts with small little things. If you allow someone, say you are at home right now during lockdown, and one of your brothers goes out to usayo check, and you allow it, and you are okay with it, he will carry on, he will do something else, and then you can't act surprised when he does something big and finally he's arrested. But when he does get arrested, he would have done maybe 20, 50 other things that we don't know of, because we've made it okay to do things. If it's abantu bethu abasondelene nathi, asibakhuzi, asikhuzani, asiqondisani, umthetho asiwubambi, ngoba kukubafo noma kuyingane kwethu, hayi somxolela ngoba wakithi lo, noma mhlambe if I'm going to benefit umuntu ozongithengela igross noma ngithengela impahla noma yenze lokhu, I'm going to benefit. It then defeats the whole purpose of the system, because it really means that a lot of society just have not received the opportunity to be corrupt, and not necessarily are against corruption. Because if we can't root it out.
Just before we go to an ad break, because we will be carrying on with you after the ad break, 500 billion rand stimulus packages, big monies that they're not coming from our state purse. We're having to go out there and borrow some of that money. How should looters be punished?
For the private sectors, I do think they should be blacklisted. Their status as business able to operate should be suspended, so that CIPC certificate is suspended, because if you are stealing at such a time, I mean, I'm not condoning stealing at another time, but when we have that 500 billion seems like a lot, but I can tell you from from being part of SMMEs, especially the youth ones, you won't even find 1% that will get a part of it. I'm guaranteed. In fact, you would struggle to get even $1 billion that has gone to young people, let alone young black people, let alone young black women or young black people with disabilities.
But
you will
Africa,
not even get a percent.
Asithi ibambe lapho sithi nje sithathe ikhefu besibuya sikwazi ukuqhubeka sikhulume ngempela ukuthi can we still trust and hope ukuthi corruption sizoyibamba la iqale khona sikwazi ukuthi sishintshe izinto eMzantsi Afrika. Let's quickly take an ad break.
Welcome back to Daily Thetha as we are wrapping up today's conversation about the scourge of looting and corruption in South Africa. Africa who is still joining us on the line. Can we really beat corruption in South Africa? Because I understand that at the end of the day, it's not always just about the pocket. It's why we've got these undeveloped education systems. We've got health systems that are now actually being exposed by COVID-19. South Africa has got a huge inequality in terms of the things that should be assisting us. Let's have this conversation and carry on with Put Africa. Put Africa, simple and put, can we beat corruption and looting in South Africa?
We can.
That's comforting.
We can. I think we paint a picture, but part of the picture says that not everyone is corrupt, not everyone in government is corrupt. There are people who do get arrested for corruption. But like I said, the problem is that we are too obsessed with these Hollywood-style narratives. You are going to, instead of finding 100 people that are corrupt, and understanding that corruption will happen if you're looking at government at a national level, where national departments have their own budget, provincial level, where provincial departments have their own budget, local government, where the councillors you were referring to at a municipal level or district level will do their own corruption, then at a state-owned entity level. Those are all different spheres and spaces where corruption can take place. So if I then say President Ramaphosa is corrupt and he's responsible for all the corruption, are you saying that from the 240 municipalities, President Ramaphosa goes into that municipality budget, convinces someone, and then in all the provinces, in all the different departments in the province, does the same thing at the national level? It's not practical, but we do that so that we can hide what others are doing. What should happen after this is we should have the procurement bill. What Treasury should do is not hide where the money has gone. Not hide where the money has gone. It should be public information. Because we're saying this is a pandemic, we should know exactly if Africa enterprises supplied sanitizers for 10 million rands. It should be known that Africa Enterprises supplied so many sanitizers. Then you can compare when we then say, Daily Thetha hygienic services also supplied for 10 million, but they gave us 1,000 units and I gave them 500 units. Why is there discrepancy? So that the public, and not the public protector only, or the police or whoever else can hold people accountable. It should show who signed it off.
Transparency.
If you are a DDG or you are the DG or the HOD and you signed it off, the whole world should know that you signed it off.
And Africa, Mkangala, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate everything. And I think it is a great time for us to look at the procurement bill and ask the questions, how do we make sure it ensures that this looting and corruption is brought to book?
And it's ukuthi lento iqala emakhaya la hleli khona nabazali bethu small conversations, and it leads up all the way to higher positions la umhlaba wonke sobona khona ukuthi wena unesandla. And talking about isandla, we went down to Tabanchu in the Free State, and of course they went through a bit of their own drama when it comes to food parcels that arrived and they were not quality. And of course the mayor there was then someone who was then questioned to say, is this really what we deserve? Please have a look at what happened.
Up in arms, these councillors accused Mlamleli of not taking people's lives seriously. Their main concern is this food package, claiming it's degrading for people who are already tackling poverty.
On behalf of other councillors of Mangaung, I'm very disappointed and angry because while Majora did on the social media, she posted a different food parcels. The one that she has sent to us is a disgrace, it's an insult to our people.
While some community members complain about what they call substandard food parcels, life remains tough for Nkukame's family. An unemployed 61-year-old Emma Nkukame shares this 2-roomed house with her 3 children. She registered to receive food packages, but she's yet to receive them.
My family survives by selling vegetables. We are suffering. We are still waiting for those food parcels.
Meanwhile, the mayor maintains that food parcels were funded from her own pocket. She says the accusations against her are a witch hunt by dictators.
When we see things like this is that the people that we've chosen in Pagatin are the same people which again questions our decision making as the community and us taking role which as in let's keep and you need to be punished according by law of what you've done.
And perhaps maybe there is a lesson to learn, especially when we're talking about, you know, the punitive measures that need to be put in place. Because immediately, working from the poor, all of a sudden people need to do investigations and commissions. We've got a social media coming in from Sipetanati, Ndabazonke. This government is playing dumb. What makes them deliver groceries in the first place? They should just pay certain supermarkets the money for food parcels and let people go and collect by both biometric system and ID verifications. They can then record each recipient and his or her dependents to avoid repetition in 1 month, and those with no dependents must be grouped together and also be recorded accordingly. If in this potential process, each recipient is given a list of items to shop and will be verified in the final stages to ensure adherence to the given list. By doing so, we can reduce chances of corruption. Sipetanati for president, we are putting you in government. That is how you use 4IR.
Yeah. Lalela bathi phansi ngecorruption phansi. Bathi phambili ngedaily Thetha ukuthi sifundise sikhumbuze ukuthi what we need to do as abantu abasha.
Remember that our conversations do carry on social media, so do join us there. Let's talk, let's keep talking. If we talk enough, maybe perhaps we can start fighting the scourge of corruption and looting because the Thank you and goodbye.